Andrea.
So much, Alan, and hello to everyone. Thank you for joining us and welcome to Wellness, Immunity, and Resiliency. It's my pleasure and honor to introduce our speaker, Donnie Yance. Donnie is an internationally known master herbalist, clinical nutritionist, educator, blog writer, and author of 2 books, Herbal Medicine, Healing, and Cancer, and Adaptogens in Medical Herbalism. He's worked with thousands of clients over several decades, carrying out the mission of Mederi Center, helping to enhance the quality of life and extend longevity for those facing cancer and other chronic diseases. As the lead architect of Mederi Medicine, which we call Mederi Care, Donnie and the hundreds of practitioners he's trained are transforming the current model of healthcare to one that promotes lifelong wellness through time-honored and research-informed natural approaches to health and healing. We hope you enjoy and learn from today's talk. If you have a question, please write it in the chat box, and our gracious hostess, Barbara Slane, will moderate for you by asking Donnie to respond to select questions at the end of the talk. We won't be able to address everyone's questions today, so we thank you in advance for your understanding. If you'd like more information about our clinic at Mederi Center, Mederi Academy, our online training program for healthcare practitioners, Donnie's blog, or would like to make a tax-deductible donation to Mederi Foundation, please see the links posted at the top of the chat. Donnie, thank you so much for being with us today, and I'm turning it over to you now.
Thank you, Andrea, and welcome everyone. I'm very excited to spend this time with you all and present to you a whole webinar on wellness, immunity, and resiliency. So this talk is all about the good news. That's what it's all about, how we can ourselves become healthier in wake of COVID-19 and all of the other illnesses and conditions and disease that impact all of our lives on a daily basis. So I'm going to share my screen with you and get started. So I'm going to talk about an hour, and I may not finish my presentation, but I'm going to stop in an hour, see what kind of questions we have, and if we get some questions answered, I may pick it back up where I left off. If not, we're going to PDF the entire presentation. So everyone who is attending and who has signed up will get a PDF version, as well as a few other little surprise gifts that we'll kind of package up and send to all of you. So here we go. So here we have it. So I put down twice the where you can text to. And again, this is a gift of us, of the Mederi Foundation to you that I'm presenting, but we are building this incredible academy and I'm so excited about it. And we plan to open up next September. And I just want everyone to know about Mederi Care and how important it is for us to leave this legacy of teaching people what we refer to as unitive medicine. That's the description that I have for Mederi Care. And as you can see, Mahatma Gandhi says your wealth is your real wealth, and your health is your real wealth. And that's really important to keep in mind. So why create a new system of medicine? Well, Buckminster Fuller says you never change things by the existing reality. You change something by building a new model, making that existing model obsolete. To be effective in medicine, we need a starting point, a common frame of reference. A frame of reference is a set of criteria of stated values in relationship to which measurements or judgments can be made. So it's very important that we see how everything can be unified as one, and it is that one that really matters. And it's not any one of the pieces, it's how the pieces all fit together like a big puzzle. So how do we define wellness? So wellness can be defined by several institutions and people. We have the World Health Organization, but then I went on to define it myself. So My definition is wellness can be defined rather abstractly as intellectual, spiritual, emotional, and physical vitality, engaging in attitudes and beliefs that enhance the quality of life. So what we have now, as you can see, is a big change in the death. With COVID, you can see COVID-19 is the third leading cause of death in 2020. But you'll also see, interesting enough, heart disease also went up for the first time in a long time. So you can look here, and then overall, life expectancy fell by 1.13 years in the United States. And probably the COVID-19 contributed to that, but we've been on a little bit of decline for several years now in life expectancy after climbing and climbing. And so there are probably numerous factors other than just death occurring as a result of COVID, but the impact COVID has had on other conditions as well, particularly chronic conditions like heart disease, cardiovascular disease, and cancer as well. So research suggests significantly increased risk, both hospitalizations and death, in persons that have developed COVID that are obese, particularly morbidly obese, because obesity is in various stages. You have 4 different stages of obesity, class 1, 2, 3, and 4, and over 40% BMI is class 4 obesity, and that's the highest risk. So if there aren't any other reasons why we need to become healthier, COVID has taught us that to optimize health, which is what this talk is about, is health optimization, is not only important to how healthy we age, how graceful we age, but it's also vitally important to when we come in contact with viruses, bacteria, and now, of course, in the last 1.5 to 2 years, COVID-19. So changes in body mass index, unfortunately, as a result of COVID and the increase in lack of physical activity and eating poorly in our adolescents and our youth, has caused a 9% increase in weight gain. So if we didn't have a problem before COVID, COVID has actually magnified that problem. And there are other problems you can see here, the psychological impact of quarantine and how it's reduced and how it's impacted us. High prevalence of mental concerns, particularly amongst children and adolescents during the pandemic. And then you can see here the relationship. So we're always trying to see things in a relationship way. And so severe COVID-19 may be fueled by disrupted gut barrier integrity. So as you know now, the gut is called the enteric brain. So there's this gut-brain relationship. How we think and our behavior affects our gut health. How healthy our gut health is affects how well we think and our brain health. There's a two-way relationship here impacting each other. And by the way, unfortunately, this talk, I had to take 520 slides and take them all the way down. So I'm only able to cover about 15 or 20% of what I actually have of material to cover. So I had to pick and choose what to be able to cover in today's talk. And so here, quarantine carries on some long-term effects on cardiovascular health, possibly related to unhealthy lifestyle and anxiety. So all of these other things are impacted now in our life, which were already declining. You know, we've already become more and more less involved in each other. And health is very much a relationship based type of medicine. So relationship internally, relationship externally, how well we relate to each other, how well we relate to the universe, how well things relate inside of us. And it's very, very, very participatory. So loneliness and social isolation is a big risk factor for total mortality, not just mortality with COVID-19. So now we move into this whole understanding that actually loneliness and social isolation is a greater risk factor than obesity and smoking. So you're better off smoking and being obese and having great relationships and being socially active than being isolated. So here our friend Dr. Fauci says, you know, we may never shake hands again, but ironically, being hugged was associated, according to this study, with a frequency of diminished effect of respiratory infection. So does hugging provide stress buffering social support? A study susceptibility to upper respiratory infections and illness suggests such a thing. So, and what is the cost of this whole concept of pathogenic thinking? So the host-pathogen relationship. This goes back to Claude Bernard and Louis Pasteur. So Louis Pasteur was all about the germ is everything, the disease is everything. Claude Bernard would say, no, 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 it's the environment. So Claude Bernard and Louis Pasteur always went back and forth with each other. The germ theory was Pasteur. No, the microenvironment is the most important thing. Why do some people get hit with the same pathogen and either don't get sick or get sick mildly and overcome it, where someone else it's their demise? And so there are two different ends of looking at this, and we're very focused in medicine today on this pathogenic thinking, and we have to change that. We have to get back to this thinking of how do we create vitality? How do we optimize our health at all levels? And then that enables us to respond in healthy ways to adversaries of all types. I'm a big Claude Bernard fan. He was the first one that coined the term homeostasis or balance, which now we have come to go beyond homeostasis to a concept of allostasis, which is having to do with flexibility and change. So new study shows COVID-19 much more likely to kill men by double the amount, particularly in middle-aged men, say 45 to 84 years old. It seems twice as many men die of COVID than that of women. So all this way thinking the male is the stronger is actually not true. And this little click here, so when you get the presentation, if you click on it, it's a really great little video by Robert Sapolsky, the great writer of the book, a teacher at Stanford. He wrote the book, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. Amazing book to have, by the way, and how you can see now that why men are actually weaker in a sense. So as we adapt to be stronger in one way, we become weaker in another way, just like high competitive athletes are very strong at their sport, but have very poor immune systems. So we need to find ways of seeing resiliency and strength in diverse ways, not just in one way, not just how good we are as an athlete. That doesn't mean we have good immune systems or we have good digestive systems. So you have to constantly be viewing things from various lenses and vantage points. We have to understand that the feminine component to health is actually more important than the masculine component, although both are very, very important. The masculine component is how strong we are. As people get weaker, they get frailer. Frailty syndrome is a leading cause of high risk mortality with COVID-19. It's not just age. With age comes frailty syndrome. And then also, so with age, we're getting more catabolic, but we're also drying out. So moisture in our bodies and our cells and our molecules is a critical component to good health. That's why how supple we are, how flexible we are, how the ability of us to be flexible. Like even take the heart itself. The heart itself is this incredible muscle that needs to be strong. But even when under a lot
Donnie, did we lose you?
We lost him. I don't know. Don't know why.
All right.
Jen, or
We hit-
maybe Andrea could help.
Donnie will be back in a moment. It looks like his camera, it looks like he lost internet connection. Jen, do you want to come on for a second there? And just also, Andrea, just also recap people who've missed like the beginning of the show. If you can just go over about contributions and more information. You can put your camera on. Why doesn't someone call Donnie and see where he is? Oh, there you are, Andrea. See if Donnie's internet went out or something. But also repeat your introduction about how to donate to Mederi. Can you do that?
You bet, Alan. Hi, everyone. So sorry for the technical difficulties. I will just assume that someone on our team is contacting Donnie to help bring him back to our virtual world here. So we apologize for that, but if you are just joining us and you want to learn a little bit more about Mederi Center or perhaps the Mederi Academy, our online training program for healthcare practitioners, the websites for both of those are listed at the top of the chat box. And you can also get the link for Donnie's blog if you're interested in reading more about his contributions to conversations on health, spirituality.
Can you just talk about Mederi in general? Like what is Mederi? It's a place, but you're also doing online consultation. Talk about Mederi.
Mederi Center has a clinic that's located in Ashland, Oregon, but in addition to Donnie's clinical practice, we have 2 other healthcare practitioners that have been trained in Donnie's methodology, which, as I said earlier at the top of the show, we call Mederi Medicine or Mederi Care. And so our clinic is a big part of how we serve our mission. And so our practitioners are trained in this methodology, which utilizes Donnie's 4 primary toolboxes, which are botanical medicine, clinical nutrition, lifestyle medicine, and also a spiritual component to healing as well. So if you're interested in learning more about what we do, there's a lot of information on our website. And we do consult with the majority of our patients virtually and have done so for many years, long before telemedicine became a thing of COVID. So
okay, I think we have Donnie coming back online.
Right.
Thank you, because I think Mederi is a valuable resource, and people need to hear about it and their approach to healing and health and resiliency. Donnie, your camera's not on. Put your camera on, and then we'll go back into our talk with Donnie Yance. Thank you for standing by, everybody. We just
Sorry about that.
It's okay. What happened? Did your internet go out?
Yeah, something just glitched and it just dropped right in the middle. So I don't know.
It happened. Put your camera on. We can hear you. Put your camera on. And
oh, there we go. Okay.
Okay. And then
You're
back. And can you bring your do you know where you were in the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm going to turn off my camera and go ahead. Okay, you are
we good?
We're good. You're back up.
Great. Sorry about that, everyone. Hope you had a good time. I was there. So let's move on for a second. So one of the components to understanding health is what we refer to as the 4 life requirements.
Oh, we don't see your PowerPoint just yet. Do you want
I should be.
No, you have to click on screen share and then click on the PowerPoint, and it should.
Sorry about that. I thought I hit.
That's okay. It happens. I mean, I'm doing this all day, so I know what can happen. But just you see it you see share screen at the bottom.
Post disabled participant Sheen.
Oh, sorry, because you got kicked out. I have to make you a
Right.
Sorry about that. Okay, make you a co-host. Okay, now you can do it because you're a co-host. Try it again.
There we go.
Okay, perfect. We're ready.
There we go. We're back in business.
Yes.
So one of the Charles Darwin said in The Origin of the Species, says it's not the strongest or the most intelligent of the species that survive. It is the one that is most adaptable to change. So this is very important. So these are the 4 life requirements: energy, adaptation, protection, and reproduction. Very important to understand that. And this concept of hormesis is critical to understanding adaptation. So as you can see here, moderate amounts of stress, that's all kinds of stress: environmental stress, emotional stress, pathological stress, viruses, bacteria, at low levels in healthy environments improve health and longevity. So this hormetic strengthening is critical. And when we're exposed to those things, we build adaptive response. And part of adaptive response then makes us stronger and healthier. If we have too much of those things, we get damage, and it's, leads to poor quality of health, chronic disease, and mortality. So you have to understand the critical aspect of low-level exposure. Great examples: sun exposure. You're all told sun gives us skin cancer. It's terrible. Stay out of the sun. Don't burn. Now we learn the sun's important. We get our vitamin D from the sun, and it builds our moods, and it's important for protection against all other forms of cancer. And so which is right? And so it's always about the right amount of things. Ben Franklin said, "A place for everything, everything in its place." It's probably my single most favorite quote in the history of the world to understand health. A place for everything, everything in its place. So when someone asks me, it's such a great answer. So the association of aging is greatly linked to a decrease in adaptability to stress. So you can see, as the more stress that we have, it's not just the impact of stress, it's our ability to cope with stress. So part of the foundation or root system to good health is building using our tools to build those 4 life requirements. How do we strengthen our energy? How do we become more efficient with adaptation? One of the single most important words to good health is efficiency. Efficiency. How do we make everything more efficient? Because with aging and poor health is a lack of efficiency. Not how do we do things. So now let's quickly move into what we call Mederi Assessment. So as a Mederi practitioner, what we'll be teaching in the academy is this concept of the targets and applying and layering the various lenses. Some of those lenses are microscopic, some of them are telescopic. And we're always looking at things kind of with this Sherlock Holmes kind of approach. Some things are about evaluating the host, which comes through interviewing, which comes from the narrative that somebody tells us about their health, along with the questions that we may have to pose to that person. How we get the relationship we build with someone. Another understanding of health is the microenvironment, which is all the laboratory tests we would look at. And the third is the disease itself. How do we understand the disease, the genomics of the disease, epigenomics? How do we look at cancer pathology? And always knowing this microenvironment, there's this tug of war between what's best for the host or what's best for the disease. And we're always altering that microenvironment. And then our thematic elements are always layering ancient wisdom and modern science. So old systems of medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, and layering that with modern science. And always wisdom is better than knowledge. And it's Albert Einstein said that the intuitive mind is the sacred gift and the rational mind is the faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. So then we have, again, science, and then we have music, we have improvisational music like the cosmic reaching of John Coltrane's improvisation. to the layering of the Rite of Spring by Stravinsky. Very important aspects. Now we have our toolboxes. So how do we build this resiliency? How do we build wellness? Well, there's several toolboxes that we use. We have my favorite, the soul of Mederi care is botanical medicine, which I often refer to as humble medicine. Then we have nutritional medicine, which is supplemental nutritional medicine. We have dietary medicine, lifestyle medicine, and then the glamorous medicine, the pharmaceutical medicine. And the sixth toolbox is spiritual care. And spiritual care isn't something aside, it's interwoven into all of the other toolboxes in the lenses. So the human being, so how do we nourish our body? So we have 3 layers of nourishment. One is celestial, which is how well we breathe, which is essential to our health, how we take oxygen in, and the efficiency of breathing. And so we're always working on breath control, getting more and more efficient, breathing through your nose, out through your mouth. We have earthly nourishment, which is food and water. And then we have spiritual nourishment, which is heavenly, which is always about giving and receiving love, feeling a sense of purpose and a sense of belonging, essential components of what it means to be human and have good health. So in that theory, we have studied the origins of the word health. So what does it mean? How we learn the embedded in the word health is the root word how. So the word how, it also comes from the root word for whole, as well as the word called holy. That's why we say, you know, the Our Father, hallowed be thy name, you know, hallowed, holy be thy name, that word. And some people would say how, like in a welcome, you know, to welcome somebody, like hello. And so this concept to be healthy means to be whole, which also means to be holy. And as you can see, social interaction, we study people of longevity. That's the best way that we know how to be healthy. What are the commonalities of people around the world that boast great health and great longevity? It's certainly not being close to hospitals and institutions or taking 10, 15 types of medication. We're kind of been thought that we're broken, we break more and more medication. These people around the world are people that actually often are far from those things. Social networks are very, very important to our health. So we'll see Sardinia, family and friends gathering for a meal, Mediterranean diet. We can see volunteering increases longevity and health. So people that participate who volunteer have a reduction in total mortality, and they have more positive outlook on life, feel a purpose of life, have lower levels of depression, hopelessness, loneliness. And these are things that we can be doing to make our health. I lived with a priest, Father Philip O'Shea, who always said, if you want your problems to go away, involve yourself with somebody else's problems, help them with their problems, and your own problems will get better. So this association of optimism, you know, we got to stop thinking so pessimistically about everything. The world's blowing up and all that. Well, if it is, it is. But let's be part of the solution. Let's be the counter to that. Let's remain always hopeful and even optimistic, because that will make a difference. Optimism is lovingly embracing the moment with all its horrors, but its wonders and its deep mysteries as well. And then it's Mark Twain that says, I've been an old man now and seen a great many problems, most of which never happened. So this ability to worry and obsess about the future, about worst case scenarios, we got to kind of get away from that. And Meister Eckhart, who's again a great theologian, said people should think less about what they ought to do and more about what they ought to be. If only their being were good, the works would shine forth brightly. So look at the chart. You can see the difference in all-cause mortality just by our behavior and how we think. Optimism is a modifiable and may be associated with healthier aging. There are 2 ways to live. You can live as nothing is a miracle or everything is a miracle. Albert Einstein. Choose. And then the biology of kindness, how it makes us happier and healthier. So Oris Bedridge says, you make a life by how you serve. And research is very much demonstrating that these are critical components to our health and our wellness and our ability to have resiliency. So difficult times create opportunities for deepening of love. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. In the end, the face we turn to is ourself. We're looking in the mirror, and we don't want to be afraid of that. We want to see through all the obstacles and all of the problems and see that God center within us. Friendship is unnecessary, like philosophy and art has no value. Rather, it is one of those things which give value to survival. So now let's look at the multi-scale self-regulatory networks. The best kind of medicine does three things. Builds robustness, builds auto-regulation, and auto-organization. So in Mederi Care is unitive participatory medicine. Everything participates. We believe in the life force. We believe that in all living beings is a life force, and that life force is doing what it can to create balance and good health. How we assist it and lend a helping hand creates the best kind of medicine. And then plants, herbs work at that molecular level, cellular level, and at the organ tissue level. And a healthy system is one that self-regulates. Auto-regulation is fundamental mechanism in genetic networks. Build robustness, auto-regulation, auto-organization. So Mederi in network medicine is essence, which is that endocrine. The life force breaks down into the vital force, the vital essence, the vital spirit. We look at our immune system, we look at our heart and our nervous system. And again, everything is connected. You know, we talked about the gut and the brain. What about the ears and the kidneys? What about the eyes and the liver? What about how much we're learning about gum and teeth health to our cardiovascular health? Everything is interly connected. So best medicine is medicine that gets into that root system, just like a tree, and then nourishes the root system, and the tree gets healthier. And talking about the tree, so let's look at COVID-19. So we have symptom presentation, fevers, pain, lung disease, heart disease, GI tract diseases. Then we have underlying, with obesity, obesity doesn't always have to come, but typically with obesity is increased inflammatory oxidative damage in the body. So we're living in a state of already inflammation and oxidative stress. Therefore, when we get an acute condition that is very inflammatory, it's inflammation on top of inflammation. Then we don't get over it, that inflammation then drives into oxidative damage, and then what's mostly connected to the mortality of COVID-19. Then we have Frailty Syndrome. Notice I don't say age. I don't say, the oldest person in the planet got COVID at 113 and survived, but it's being frail. And we see people in nursing homes, how frail they are. We've got to build robustness and resiliency in all of our age groups. That is fundamental to Mederi Care. Health optimization, vitamin D deficiency, zinc deficiency. These are critical components. So lab tests connected to COVID-19. The most important lab test is right in a CBC. A CBC is so valuable and it's so ignored. To break it down, so the neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio is critical. Neutrophils have one role, positive role, that is to fight bacteria. You have a bacterial infection, your neutrophils go up. Otherwise, they drive inflammation. Otherwise, they're the single easiest way to see someone declining with COVID, because lymphocytes fight viruses and they fight cancer. So in all looking at analyzing cancer patients, for me, the single most important test is neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio, even in cardiovascular health, because neutrophils are going to be connected to inflammation if they're not connected to fighting bacteria. Low platelets the same way, or the platelet to lymphocyte ratio too. A lot of the thrombolytic episodes that have happened, both with the vaccines related issues, are a result of a precipitous drop in platelets. The platelets that are dropping, the leftover platelets panic. They actually panic. They get super aggratory, meaning sticky, and then that's what gives us the thrombosis. LDH, which is lactate dehydrogenase, is also a very important marker, both in acute disease, but also in cancer. It's a byproduct of glycolysis, is a buildup of lactic and pyruvic acid. And then elevated D-dimer and fibrinogen predispose people's risk to developing blood clots. Loss of taste connected to zinc deficiency. Zinc pools are being drained with COVID. Severe vitamin D deficiency, always check the 25-OH and the 125-DIOH. And then two others are low selenium, and in men, very low testosterone. These are all of the correlated biomarkers. And here you can see neutrophil lymphocyte ratio and outcome in COVID-19 cases. Blood type matters. So it turns out that people with blood type A have significantly higher COVID-19 risk compared to non-A groups. And overall, blood type O is the most protected, as you can see. And then O type overall is more protected against blood clots and heart disease and cancer as well. So how does Mederi Care look at risk factors for hypercoagulation or people prone to blood clots? Well, energetically, we see that as blood stasis or blood stagnation. And we use enzymes and herbs to move the blood, break down the fibrin. We have botanicals, enzymes, fatty acids. Pharmaceutically, we have low molecular heparin. We have various nutrients like magnesium, B6, zinc that are very critical to eicosanoid balance. Blood tests that we run, fibrinogen, D-dimer, asymmetric dimethylarginine, plasminogen, activator inhibitor 1, homocysteine, certain types of single nucleotide polymorphisms as well. I'm not going to go through all this. I'm just showing you the complexity of how we can analyze, the lenses we can use, and then the toolboxes that we have to deal with it, the therapeutics. Now we go into my favorite, which is herbal medicine or botanical medicine. You know, from the spiritual perspective, plants can be viewed as the ultimate alliance for human beings. We have co-evolved since the beginning of time. Humans have looked to nature and to plants for food, medicine, shelter, clothing, you name it. We've coexisted. We know each other. We're intimately connected. Our plants know our ecosystem. They're familiar. They know how to harmonize. Doesn't mean you can't abuse plant medicines. You can abuse anything. You can abuse water. It's called drowning. So for the earth, which drinks in the rain that comes upon it, it brings forth to it, brings forth plants fit for them, by whom it is cultivated, receives blessings from God, which comes from Scripture, Hebrews 6:7. So this is a beautiful photo of that. So now we're learning that smarter cures to combat COVID and future pathogens may be connected to being outdoors and being with nature. So you can see from this guy here, he says, we've exhausted all conventional measures. It's Friday the 13th, by the way. One last desperate option is to put you on alternative medicine that has a 96% success rate. That's kind of how I feel almost when it comes to COVID, to believe it or not. It's like we're so ignoring all this beautiful research. But being close to nature, even being outdoors next to trees, significantly improves our nervous system and our immune system. You don't even have to ingest. Just be around nature. And of all of nature that is shown to be the most therapeutic, it's pine trees. It's called forest bathing. And here's a really beautiful way of seeing, look at that world tree, how beautiful. And then all of the components, COVID-19 and antiviral plant extracts and their compounds and alkaloids to flavonoids The plants are loaded with a diversity of compounds to combat pathogens. Plants have been around way longer than us, and they're way more intelligent at dealing with pathological stress because they can't run away. They can't go and lock down in your room, isolate. They have to live in relationship with nature, with those pathogens. They also can't forage for food and water. So they develop sophisticated ways of dealing with viruses and other pathogens. And by the way, we just ingest those plants and we benefit from the stress that they've undergone. That science is now called xenohormesis, that the stress of the plant, when we ingest that plant, we benefit. Smarty plants, I like to call them, are good at combating viruses. Let's take advantage of xenohormesis. It's Professor Stefano Mancuso that says if you define intelligence as the capacity to solve problems, plants have a lot to teach us. So like how we apply herbal medicine to something like COVID. So at the center is always adaptogens. That's the root system of Mederi care. Then we have organ-specific tonicers, we have immune tonics, but adaptogens sit there, nerve tonics. Then we have, on the acute, we have diaphoretics and acutely immune activating plants as well, lymph-moving plants and activators. But that's just a little way of seeing like how we look it down. So adaptogens are metabolic regulators. So they help us normalize and regulate. And they work in all systems. It's almost too hard to believe the amazing benefits and the vast amount of decades and decades of research. There are more research than anything in the world is adaptogens. So here you can see ginseng and all the various ginsenicides in all the different areas that they help us combat stress, depression. You'll be able to see here the phytochemistry of adaptogens affecting the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. So to be an adaptogen, you have to impact the HPA axis, which is the hub of the neuroendocrine system. You also have to have a normalizing effect, a non-specific effect, and be non-toxic. And so all those areas. Here's a look at Panax ginseng, the impact it has on benefiting cognition, on physical performance, on regulating blood glucose and lipid profiles, and immensely the immune benefits as well. Just one plant, one adaptogen, all the areas of clinical research validating it. So that's why these plants for me are the ones that we build our foundation on, and why I wrote a whole book about it. Eleutherococcus was studied, the king of all adaptogens, inhibiting all kinds of respiratory infections. In Russia, they would take huge factories, give one factory every day, a couple of mils of Eleuthero, they come in the factory, a couple mils when they leave, a couple of dropperfuls. And by the end of the year, they'd look at what a decrease they had of acute infections, of absentee, of increase in work performance. Now you can see plant-derived adaptogens showing to combat COVID-19 right at the receptor site. So here you can see in the Withenia somnifera, which is ashwagandha, one of the king adaptogens, compounds in that plant now inhibiting SARS-CoV-19. You can see the number one herb, I think, in all the materia medica for overall feminine kind of female health and working that kind of yin water element is Shataveria, Asparagus racemosus. That also has several compounds in it that are shown to combat the ACE receptor and combat COVID-19. So here you can see phytochemicals present in Indian ginseng, which is ashwagandha, possess potential to inhibit SARS-CoV-2 in a molecular docking and MD simulation study. So ashwagandha, Withenia somnifera, you wouldn't think in that setting. Here you can see Shataveria increasing that inward yin essence And then herbs that strengthen the yang anabolic essence, like Cissus quadralaris. You have another herb, Schizandra, adaptogen, astragalus, more immune specific, and then always nourishing the spirit with either albizia, which is the mimosa tree, or calming and particularly muscle relaxant, which is Scutellaria latiflora. Shataveria, you can see here, elevates weight of adrenal glands, helps to combat stress, inhibits stress-induced pro-inflammatory cytokines, protects the GI tract to stress, improves stress tolerance and swimming endurance. And then you can see here another depiction from another paper showing the Shataveria being a plausible antiviral agent in COVID-19. So the main herb I use for kind of menopausal or female tonification also has immunological benefits. That's why I love finding plants that have the most global benefit. Now we see medicinal mushrooms restoring tumor education dendritic cells, making our immune system work more efficiently, be smarter, and downregulating the inflammatory regulatory T cells, increasing infiltration of macrophages, granulocytes, dendritic cells. And beta-glucans are very, very important components of several medicinal mushrooms, particularly the Coriolis versicolor or Remedies and the Reishi Ganoderma lucida mushroom. And here you can see how beta-glucans activate and fight against pathogens. And here you can see medicinal mushrooms such as the chaga mushroom, which grows on the birch tree, also being a potential candidate against SARS-CoV-2 virus. And so I have to go fast, I'm sorry, because I want to cover a lot. So here's another paper by Elsevier. These are prestigious journals, just so you know. Herbal immune boosters, substantial warriors of pandemic COVID-19 battle. This is good news that you're not hearing from anybody else. It's so a shame. There's wide scope of herbal medicine that has been used since in traditional times as potential candidates against COVID-19. Herbal medicine for the treatment of COVID-19, a systemic review of the meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials. And you can see, based on these trials, positive effects of herbal medicine on COVID-19. Here is a Cochrane meta-analysis. Just so you know, in the pyramid of research, Cochrane is considered God, basically speaking. There is nothing that gives the most credibility to research than a reviewed and meta-analysis study by Cochrane. Here they give herbal medicine flying colors. Again, in Chinese medicine, you go into the hospital, you get the conventional doctor, then you see the acupuncturist herbal doctor as well. So that's the way they do things. And then whenever you combine the two systems of medicine, and again, I have like 30 slides, I only show you a few. Always when herbal medicine is combined, significant improvement across the board in every category. Herbal formulas used for immune strengthening, Astragalus atractylodes. Those are main herbs I use in a formula called ImmuCare. Those are two of the main formulas. They tonify the chi, protect the external pathogens, antiviral, regulate inflammation, immune regulating. Here you can see Chinese herbal formulas treat mild to moderate COVID. Another systemic review of the meta-analysis. 12 eligible studies here. And they find, again, always the herbal medicine, as you can see, shows significant improvement across the board. Yet we know nothing of this. Nothing for prevention, nothing of treatment, nothing about what people can do to make themselves healthier. Another paper on traditional Chinese medicine used for prevention of coronavirus, review of the historical classics. And then here you can see here main herbs used, astragalus again, licorice, atractylodes, and then two herbs that I use in a formula flew away, honeysuckle and forsythia, which are the main acute combating herbs that they use for viruses like influenza. And you can see again across the board here in favor of using herbal medicine in every way. All the different studies here all significantly show herbal medicine with better outcome. Another herb, bacillin from Scutellaria bacillensis, which is the Chinese skullcap, having very potent immune modulating and particularly quenching the cytokine storm. We use that in mushroom synergy. I use it in Inflammaway, Scutellaria anti-COVID-19 activity. It's cold and bitter. So we use cold and bitter herbs when there's a lot of inflammation and a lot of heat. Propolis, probably my single most favorite combator of all infections, is propolis. If I had to only have one thing in my toolbox, one medicine, it would be propolis. It's never failed me for so many conditions. I've seen it heal wounds, MRSA, strep throat, you name it. Propolis is also in several formulas of mine as well. And you can see here antiviral immune modulating properties of propolis. Propolis and its constituents have demonstrated potential effectiveness against SARS-CoV-2 by modulating multiple pathogenic and antiviral pathways. Here's propolis again against the different modes of action, and then the different viruses that it suppresses, and the compounds, the flavonoids, the CAPE, the apigeum in the propolis, all those phenolic compounds, a lot of compounds in propolis. Here's a study from Iran, I believe, showing propolis also with hyoscyanamus, a human study showing dramatic improvements in patients with COVID-19, just using an extract or a syrup of propolis with hyoscyanamus. Echinacea, miracle herb against aging and cancer. You know, people don't realize that echinacea has been studied, that in animal studies, every time they take echinacea, they live significantly longer with disease or without disease, including leukemia. So it has a beautiful normalizing effect on immune system cytokine production. It's neuroprotective, and it's the most potent natural killer cell enhancer is echinacea. Here's in vitro analysis of echinacea preparation, echinophorus, one of the European forms of echinacea against the coronavirus, including common cold coronavirus. Here you can see improvements, levels of coughing, breathing issues, pain, hospitalization rates in the control group. So echinacea and ginger alleviated COVID-19 symptoms as well. And here's a combination, which is a classic combination of echinacea, thuya, and baptisia. That was, the eclectics used those three herbs together frequently, and they are very potent immunological combination of herbs, much better than any single herb together. Here's echinacea reducing the risk of reoccurring respiratory infections by 50%. It's in a 6-study meta-analysis controlled, randomized control studies. Here's Thailand just approved another herb called Andrographis, which we use. Again, Andrographis is the coldest of all herbs. So in inflammatory conditions, great antiviral. Use it quite a bit with cancer, with hepatitis, anything that shows where there's a lot of inflammation, inflammatory conditions. But human trials have shown improvement with COVID-19 with Andrographis as well. And Andrographis possesses immune enhancing properties. So let's move on here. I had it, but we didn't get started, and then I had that little oopsie. So I'm going to move on. Here's on berberine, which is an alkaloid in many, many herbs, golden seal, coptis root, also showing activity with COVID-19. Here's the plant golden seal. Here's the plant coptis. Berberine also targets tissue factor, which has to do with inhibiting coagulation. So it also, a lot of these herbs also suppress all those cardiovascular related issues with COVID. Artemisia, another very cold herb, very potent antiparasitic, immune modulator, and cancer suppressor, has shown to also inhibit COVID-19. And then treating fever with botanicals. So we mainly use diaphoretics. So we'll get into some home remedies now and what we can do on the home front. So one of the herbs I use is called bone set in our both flu Flu Be Gone tea, Boneset is in flu away, and it was the classic herb used to combat the Spanish flu of 1917. It had a great improvement and outcome when they started using Boneset tea to treat people. We combine it with forsythia and honeysuckle, and they protect, again, they are classic herbs for clearing heat and clearing toxins. So they're best to be used on the acute stage of viruses. So the first few days, as soon as you know you're not feeling well, these are herbs you want to get on right away and take them frequently. And they can be taken in the capsule or taken in the tea as a, like I said, like as a diaphoretic tea, it's called, which pushes the heat out. It doesn't lower the temperature by suppression, it moves the heat. Everything about what we want to do is always about movement. How well do we move our blood? How well do we move the lymph? How well do we move oxygen? Always diffusing outward the heat. Well, so in Chinese medicine, here's our Forsythia Lacarea-based TCM formula showing, again, improvement in COVID-19 with the formula. Here it is again, those herbs used in the antiviral, immune regulation, suppressing cytokine storm, protecting the lungs, all of those areas. Forsythia, main active ingredient in pretty much all the acute kind of antiviral formulas include Forsythia. Elderberry, elderflower, and elderleaf all are potent medicines. And here's elderberry for prevention and treatment of viral respiratory illnesses. The first blog I ever did on COVID-19 was a rebuttal to somebody that put out a paper telling people not to use elderberry for COVID. You know, and it was like the most ridiculous theoretical garbage I've ever read in my life, and yet it got circulated everywhere. So I had to kind of write a rebuttal to that. Anyway, you can see here again, it's a meta-analysis study that elderberry decreases the frequency of colds. Now we have aromatherapy. So one of the things you all can do at home is I have my little, this is one that we make at the clinic here called Renew, that I designed kind of around COVID, that include bergamot, thyme, cinnamon, clove, sweet orange, rosemary. But you can put it on your wrist, you can put it here, you can put it on your mask if you're out, you can diffuse it in a home diffuser, your car, anywhere you want, you can use aromatherapy. Here's essential oils may be able to prevent the spread of COVID-19, effects of eucalyptus on respiratory and bacterial viruses. Lavender is also very good for the nervous system and has antiviral properties. Here is the Renew blend, what's in it, what we make. Here is another great way to use essential oils. I love combining them in a bath with the mustard powder that you see here. You take a scoop of the mustard powder, you drink, you either take 3 or 4 flu away, drink a diaphoretic tea like the Flu Be Gone tea, throw in some Epsom salts, some essential oils, do that before bed at night, get right into bed. The next morning, you're feeling better. Here is another thing I recommend, and I love the Navage, and I have people use that and with a specific way. There's a video on how to use it. I add a little bit of the S-Clear, sometimes a little bit of the aromatic shea butter. The aromatic shea butter is something else we make at the Mederi Clinic. You use a little Q-tip, you can put a little bit, line your inside of your nasal passage with it. Elecampane is my favorite lung protected herb and strengthens the lung system. So we use that in a lung formula, lung and bronchial formula, but it's an amazing herb for strengthening the lungs. Lobelia is the best antispasmodic herb in the lungs, so spasming and cough, and it's a wonderful expectorant, anti-asthmatic as well. The primary herb used in Thomsonian medicine. Stinging nettles, my most nourishing herb that I love more than any other plant. Propolis, my most anti-infectious herb. My most nourishing favorite herb is urtica. Turns out that the leaf of nettles also significantly suppresses SARS-CoV-19 as well. So stinging nettles is the most nutrient-dense plant on the face of the planet. Bromelain is also very wonderful enzyme that dissolves fibrin. And here it is combined synergistically with N-acetylcysteine. I use another enzyme called serrapeptase as well. It's a little bit better in respiratory disease than bromelain, but both are excellent. Bromelain decreases neutrophil migration, so down regulates all that inflammatory cytokine storm as well. It's mucolytic, so it prevents the buildup of phlegm and mucus. Also prevents the thrombotic issues as well. Benefits of N-acetylcysteine, one of the best nutrients for also dissolving phlegm and supporting people with lung bronchitis, COPD, pneumonia, all of those conditions. Nitric oxide is also boosting. Nitric oxide is very important. That helps oxygenate. We would rather not give people oxygen, but help move the oxygen. And nitric oxide opens everything, so oxygen disperses better. So citrulline is one of the best for that. Many herbs and plants activate, but the best food is actually beets and beet juice. Green tea, here you can see showing an inhibitory effect on the spike binding to the ACE2 receptor. You can see here resveratrol also showing inhibiting of COVID infection, prolonging cellular survival. Here you can see resveratrol is an immune modulator. Now, the possible role of a light reducing case vitality in the 1918. So one of the worst things that happened was when we first got COVID, everyone was told to be inside and lock themselves in the room, when the opposite is what should have happened. You want to get outside in the fresh air, get the sunlight. Sunlight in and of itself is antiviral and good for our immune systems. And they learned that in the flu epidemic, because when they opened people to the outdoor hospitals that were under the sun and in the fresh air, those people got way better than the people inside the hospital. So factors affecting respiratory virus transmission, again, be outside. You know, inside they circulate the aerosols. You know, when you have air conditioner or heat on, it just circulates and circulates and circulates, never drops to the floor. So open windows, fans on, keep the air moving. Key supplements, vitamin D, zinc, quercetin, very, very key. So here you can do, now just look at D from the review of total mortality, 52 trials, 52 different clinical trials, analyze all-cause mortality. When vitamin D levels are in the normal to range, there's a significant decrease in all-cause mortality and cancer mortality significantly. All-cause mortality, again, these are studies. Look at how many studies I have. And again, this is another one, 22 randomized studies. Supplementing vitamin D significantly reduces overall mortality. I mean, it's, you know, there's probably 100 studies now that confirm that over and over again. What happens when we're sitting in a nursing home, especially in the winter? We never get outside. We're taking medications that inhibit vitamin D absorption, severe vitamin D deficiency, not just deficiency. And your immune system cannot work without vitamin D and zinc. Vitamin D does not treat COVID. Zinc does not treat COVID, but by normalizing our levels, our immune systems work so much better. Here's vitamin D, and again, relative baseline here, vitamin D and all the different cancer deaths, cardiovascular death, non-cardiovascular deaths. Everything is better when your vitamin D is normal. Overwhelming amount of evidence suggests vitamin D could reduce risk of influenza and COVID-19 infections as well. And again, these are just a few of the studies I put in the presentation. You know, they just over and over again, vitamin D deficiency and low serum calcium, predictors of poor prognosis in patients with COVID-19. Vitamin D deficiency as a predictor of poor prognosis in severe COVID-19. Over in study after study, 13 studies, 10 observational, 3 randomized control studies. Vitamin D use was significantly associated with reduced ICU admission, and mortality. It also reduced the risk of adverse outcome. Vitamin D status and other clinical characteristics of COVID-19. It even decreases the infectious rate when your vitamin D levels are normal. Serum levels of vitamin D after COVID-19 infection and severity. Vitamin D deficiency was a risk factor for COVID-19, especially in the severe critically ill. Yet, no mention of this anywhere. Vitamin D sufficiency reduced risk of morbidity and mortality with COVID-19. So you just give the people the vitamin D, significant reduction in serum inflammatory markers, C-reactive protein, increase in lymphocyte percentage, decrease in cytokine storm, all the things we want to see happen. Here's again, vitamin D supplement and outcome in COVID-19, a systemic review. Again, supplementing vitamin D, positive outcome across the board. Vitamin D status associated again. I mean, study, meta-analysis, study after study after study, but no mention anywhere. CDC doesn't have anything up about this at all. NIH, nothing about it. Evidence vitamin D supplementation reduces. So I'm gonna leave vitamin D now because you'll have this all, you can see how many studies I have. A few now on zinc, rapid review of zinc for prevention. Low zinc levels associated with severity of COVID-19. COVID-19 poor outcome in patients with zinc deficiency across the board. So zinc and vitamin D, the literature is so useful. Helpful effects, zinc modulates inflammation, decreases oxidative damage, induces all of the components of the immune system that are really critical to fighting COVID-19. Harmful effects, if you take too much zinc, you can have zinc toxicity or copper deficiency. You'd have to really work hard to get to zinc toxicity. It's possible, but close to, I've never seen it happen in anybody that I work with. Almost everybody is mildly to severely zinc deficient, particularly older people and people with cancer. Intranasal zinc levels relationship to COVID-19. That's the reason why the #1 symptom is you lose a sense of smell. Quercetin inhibits viral infection. Quercetin is amazing, and there are several human trials now on quercetin in COVID-19 as well. Quercetin, a promising treatment for common cold. Quercetin here in melatonin, reducing inflammasome, decreasing all those inflammatory components, the mast cell component, which is also another inflammatory component, then all the other benefits you see here of quercetin outside of COVID. It's one of the most global beneficial compounds and safe compounds that we could be using for our health. Melatonin, I don't personally take melatonin, but it is useful, and keep your melatonin levels up. The richest source of melatonin in food is actually cherries. So tart cherries in particular, which are also good for lowering uric acid and gout, and very high in anthocyanins and proanthocyanins. So maybe as a snack, eat some tart cherries is a good thing. And here's on all the benefits of having good healthy levels. Like melatonin's kind of like D, it's a hormone. So if it's working, if your melatonin levels are healthy and normal, you sleep well and all of that, I don't know if you need to supplement, but if melatonin levels are low and you benefit from 1, 2, 3 milligrams, then I do think it's useful. Bovine immunoglobulin. So whey protein, non-denatured whey protein is very rich in immunoglobulins. And you know that one of the most effective treatments for COVID-19 is these antibodies. And so how we naturally build our own antibodies is through ingestion of immunoglobulins, of which egg yolks, colostrum, and non-denatured whey protein are the richest sources of immunoglobulins. And here's whey protein increasing the nutritional status, the glutathione levels, and immune function in cancer patients. Fish and fatty fish, also very important for controlling and modulating resolvins and protectins, which orchestrate and resolve inflammation with regard to COVID-19. Fruits and vegetables, I'm going to go about 5 more minutes, and then we're ready for questions. So polyphenols in fruits and vegetables, also very potent antiviral constituents. The hesperidin in citrus fruit binds to key entry of the spike protein, quercetin and other catechins, chrysin, which is abundant in carrots actually. So you can see your diet can really provide a great environment, non-conducive to viral attack. And here are a lot of the foods I recommend: horseradish, fermented foods, Reggiano Parmesan cheese, beets, fruits like poached pears this time of year, citrus fruit, fresh squeezed orange juice, saving your orange rinds and different citrus peels and putting them in tea, whole grains, potatoes, apple cider vinegar drink. We have that in the recipe booklet. Raw honey and blackstrap molasses, hot and sour soup, the immune bone marrow soup, various herbs and spices you could use. Foods rich in carotenoids and chlorophylls strengthen the lungs. Persimmons, very rich in carotenoids. All of those foods, squashes, all those winter squashes that are orange in color, very, very good. You know, nature kind of brings these foods, the rooted vegetables, very good for the winter system. Horseradish, you can see, also has 27 isothiocyanates in them altogether. Highly antimicrobial and immune modulating as well. Beet juice, this is a study on hypertension, but beet juice really increases nitric oxide, increases oxygenation, very important. Lentils have a lectin in them that also have antiviral activity. Kefir, protective supplement against viral infection. Kefir might significantly inhibit cytokine storm. And here's foods that inhibit aggregation of platelets, which is thrombosis and that connection. Olive oil, tomatoes, onions, garlic, mushrooms, polyphenolic beverages, and of course, chocolate. So dark chocolate buffers stress. A single consumption of flavonoid-rich dark chocolate blunted the prothrombotic response of psychosocial stress. Never thought of chocolate in that way, that it blunts stress. It also increases the microbiome in very positive ways as well. Sleep, very, very important. You can't be healthy and have a long life if you don't have both quality and quantity of sleep of 7 to 9 hours. Thyroid health. It turns out that you don't want to have an overactive thyroid or an underactive thyroid. You want your thyroid to be efficient, but you don't want a low TSH if you can help it, because longevity is associated with actually normal to high normal levels of TSH, but normal high levels of free T3. That all points to efficiency, endocrine efficiency. That's what that means. Laughter, another essential component to our health. And there's 2 kinds of laughter: going to a movie and laughing at a funny movie, or the most therapeutic type of laughter is when something happens, say you spill something on your shirt before you're about to do a webinar and it's all stained and you can laugh at it. That is much more therapeutic. And so this is a little bit on the foundation. Again, if you want to support the Mederi Foundation, our education program, in particular, in building our school, our academy, which we have the most phenomenal people involved. We have a great director, associate director, Jason Miller is key. So we have this great team. Things are moving forward beautifully. We hope to open in September. It will be a 2-year school. If you want to make a small donation, don't think anything's too small, and you enjoyed the webinar today, please do so. We would greatly appreciate it. And then just to show you the connection between music and herbal medicine, look at the Chinese symbol for music, and now look at the Chinese symbol for herbal medicine. See how closely they're connected. So I always say the more music I create, the greater I get at medicine. And if you want, you could also support the foundation by buying, holidays are coming up. You could buy my CD, Heaven Awaits. 100% of the proceeds go to the Mederi Foundation as well. So the dove that appears to you The synchronistic ways represents hope, faith, renewed purpose, compassion, purity, and intuitive communication as well. So everything's connected. Remember, the word illness begins with the letter I. The letter wellness begins with the letters we. So life is porous, everything leaks, we're all connected. So that is the end. And I can take questions now.
Okay, can you stop sharing your screen? Just unshare.
Yeah,
Just right up at the top.
got it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Donnie. Great presentation. You have a bunch of questions. I just have a few.
right.
And Barbara has some, and Barbara's going to also read some from the chat. You mentioned vitamin D a lot as being so essential, which I appreciate. But I did hear, and I know Barbara, I always mention this to Barbara, but is it true you get 80% more vitamin D if you are naked, like without clothes? Is that true?
That
Please
is
tell him
probably,
no.
but you know, it's varied. And so the more skin exposed to the sun, the more vitamin D you absorb from the sun. And then whole milk dairy, unpasteurized, unhomogenized dairy is also a secondary source of good vitamin D. Fatty fish, sardines. And then we supplement with a special form called DAK, which is a naturized D. So let me just explain naturized for a second. So naturized is when an organism, the oldest organism on the planet, which is Saccharomyces cerevisiae, is fed synthetic vitamin D, which is what you buy in the store. It's synthetic, it's vitamin D. What we use is an embodiment of a whole organism that is being fed the vitamin D, and then it grows to be densely populated in that D. Then it has two forms of vitamin K. Vitamin K should always be with your vitamin D, as well as vitamin A. And the vitamin A is from red palm oil, which is rich in various carotenoids. And so that is significantly better than other forms of D, but very infrequently do we find somebody that doesn't have to supplement some D to meet the adequate level. So unless you are like in a position that you can be outdoors and be in your bathing suit or naked, then and get a lot of sun, most likely you're not going to be meeting those needs. And by the way, the darker your skin, the more sun you need to meet your vitamin D. So the pigmentation, you know, the darker skin, the melanite actually, because it's part of long-term adaptation. So as different genotypes, like my primary ancestors are from Southern Italy. So they'd be out in the sun all day long. And so our skin gets darker, and the darker skin kind of doesn't allow us to get vitamin D toxicity. Whereas if you're Northern European, you can absorb a lot more vitamin D quicker from the sun. And so typically darker skinned people have to be even more conscious of supplementing vitamin D than others. It may be one of the many reasons why African men are the highest risk of all for COVID-19 because of their dark skin, they're male, they're frequently overweight and have severe vitamin D deficiency.
How much time should you spend in the sun every day?
You know, I like to say always get gradual exposure. So the more you can build up your pigment, but there's probably no limit if you're not burning, but never allow your skin to burn. Always try to build a tan up, gradually get its sun exposure, but minimal 15, 20 minutes. And it's the winter time and you can, and it's dark and you're, you know, in Seattle and it's rained 2 or 3 weeks, get yourself a nice light box and get 20 minutes under there as well. If you
Right.
can.
Okay. I have one more question. You mentioned propolis. Is this bee propolis that you're talking about?
Yeah. Bee propolis is the only propolis I know, but yes. So propolis is something that the bees make. I love things that we make that are made. So the bees kind of go around to trees and they take the resin from different plants. It's the resin. Then they ingest it and they kind of enzymatically mix it in their gut, and then they regurgitate it out. So that's this amazing stuff that isn't just found in nature, and it's not found in the bees. The bees kind of do something to the plant material to improve upon it. And so propolis is this mysterious, we don't even know all the constituents in propolis. It's so complex as a substance. We're still discovering every day new compounds present in propolis.
But what's the difference between what the bees do for that and making honey? How is it honey the same sort of?
Honey, no, honey is just gathered, from the pollen. It's not the
Oh,
resin. So, and then the bees also provide royal jelly, which only is given and fed to the bee that's selected as the queen bee. But the royal jelly does not have the antimicrobial effects of the propolis. Honey does to some degree. So honey is also a very good antimicrobial too, but nothing beats propolis in my book. That's why propolis is the main ingredient in Flu Away, the main ingredient in throat and gland spray. It's the ingredient, it's even in Digestmen. So I absolutely love and adore propolis.
Okay, now for my favorite queen bee, Barbara Slane. You can go ahead.
Thanks, Alan. So someone did ask for the best propolis. So Donnie, Flu Away is for really could be preventative, or when there's an onset of something, then you really kind of ramp that up. But you also have it in the spray, in the throat and gland spray, right?
Yes,
So-
yes. So as far as purchasing propolis, you have to be careful with bee products like anything else. A lot of the commercial products are from China, and they have lead issues and other issues. And I don't, again, I have a hard time because I don't use single products. So I don't use propolis by itself. The only other thing we have in the clinic, so we get Propolis Extract made, and I used to get it directly from a beekeeper in Westport, Connecticut called Ed Wise, but it's no longer, he didn't leave his whole processing to somebody. So that was unfortunate, but he made the most beautiful propolis. Now I have it made for me special, but we use it also in a formula called U-Heal too, which is mostly propolis. But I don't know in the commercial world, like in the store, what propolis I would trust at this point. I do know if it's American propolis, American company, American propolis, I would feel a lot better than if it's Chinese.
The benefit of Mederi, I also want to add, apart from the Natura product line, which is incredible, and every item is investigated and carefully picked, and the plants work together synergistically, there is a pharmacy that puts together wonderful potions and lotions that are incredible. So this is full service. And Donnie, somebody else asked, what's the optimal level of vitamin D?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it's kind of incremental. So and everybody's blood test sometimes has some discrepancy. What is optimal for one person might not necessarily always be optimal for the other. But generally speaking, we don't want to be below 30 with our 25-OH, but I always recommend checking both the 25-OH vitamin D and the 125, which is the active form, 125 DIOH. So it's important to check both forms, because what could happen is that you could be supplementing D and your 25 isn't going up, yet your 125 is going way up, and then the doctor keeps telling you to take more, and then you get vitamin D toxicity, which isn't good. And then you're also prone, if you have a high 125 to 25, to what's called hypercalcinemia, which is not a good thing at all. So it's good, and the DAK is much better when you take it with the K and the A. That happening is much less problematic, but it can happen, particularly in a couple of different kinds of people. So there are 3 conditions you have to be somewhat careful in. One is people with autoimmune disease. 2 is people with high parathyroid, so parathyroid, and 3 is people with lymphoma. So they can tend to pool a lot more 125 than 25 vitamin D. And so just check your levels, but 45, 40, up to like 70 or 80 is typically an optimal range for most people. But you don't want to be below 30, and certainly severe deficiencies below 20. I've seen people below 10, just so you know. And when you really start to see great improvement is somewhat over 30 and then really over 40, and a few benefits maybe even up to 50. But I usually, want to see it at least over 40.
So Donnie, the last thing on the DA case, Pamela asked, is there any issues with the vitamin K with clotting?
No, not at all. So there's 3 forms of vitamin K, and K1 is found in vegetables and fruits, and it's in nature. Vitamin K2 comes from fermentation of foods, particularly natto, but it also is fermented and made from vitamin K1 in the gut into K2. And then vitamin K in high doses potentially could be problematic, but vitamin K in and of itself doesn't induce clotting, but the clotting cascade is vitamin K dependent. It just so happens to inhibit clotting and inflammation and plaque buildup. Vitamin K also plays a significant role because plaque is made up of hypercalcemia. So like when you go and get your calcium score for heart disease, that's calcification. And so, so vitamin K is one of the inhibitors of that. So people have a little misconception, mostly because of the history of not taking vitamin K with warfarin. So, warfarin blocks vitamin K, and because K is needed for the clotting cascade, you don't clot, well if you're on warfarin, because it creates vitamin K deficiency, which has tremendous problems, the least of which is the buildup of plaque in your arteries, one of the things you're trying to prevent. So actually, even people on Coumadin or warfarin should take a little bit of K and adapt their dosage to the vitamin K. Although with all of the new blood thinning medications, finally we're seeing, very little Coumadin and usage anymore.
Donnie, 2 other questions, and then you might have to go. Someone asked about vitamin C, and I don't know if the quercetin covers that or what you would recommend for people that want to know the best vitamin C.
So vitamin C is critical to the immune system. And we do, like our quercetin formula has some organic acerola vitamin C. I personally don't supplement extra, but if somebody wants to supplement a little bit extra, I'm totally okay with that. But ascorbic acid and synthetic vitamin C is again a double-edged sword. So when somebody has acute COVID, you take a lot of vitamin C, and now you could increase the oxidative damage because vitamin C is pro-oxidative in higher doses, particularly synthetic ascorbic acid. So I don't recommend that, but I recommend making sure either through your diet or through low supplementation, you have adequate levels of vitamin C.
And
Okay.
a lot of people are asking, sorry, Alan, where they can get the cookbook.
Yeah, that will be emailed to them. So I believe that's a question for Andrea. They'll get the PDF PowerPoint presentation, they'll get the recipe booklet, and then the immune booklet. But Andrea will probably, I believe, if she wants to chime in and tell people how that will come to them, that would be great. But
I know a lot of questions weren't answered, and what I want to say about a lot of them and the way Mederi approaches things is that it's not just about a reading of one organ or one test. It's looking at the person in their totality, mind, body, soul. And so I encourage you to see one of their amazing practitioners. I do. It's worth it all. So
What about, so you don't want to take any more, because someone just asked.
I stepped out, so I think we should go 5 or 10 more minutes.
Okay, someone asked about cataracts, ulcerative colitis, and rheumatoid arthritis. I guess they're all different, but
well, okay, let me start. Like, if we can, the best way to do things is like go back and look at the way that I showed the lenses and analyze. So the way that we work is there's a big focus on the host and strengthening that. we analyze the microenvironment, then we look at the disease. So there's always this three, and it's almost like a circle. It's not like three things, it's not this trilogy that's not really like a circle. So when we look at cataracts, so cataracts are a predominantly induced from age-related oxidative damage. So all of the things that strengthen that, and I've actually developed a formula for that, but I'll say a few things for cataracts. So I typically directly, some of the specific things I do is an eye wash. Actually, I'll do something easier. There's a product called Visual Acuity. Visual Acuity is a carnosine, not carnitine, a carnosine-based eye drop that I use for cataracts. I also supplement carnosine, which is made by, Carnosine Supreme is made by Designs for Health. That's one of the specific things. The next thing is an abundance of carotenoids. So carotenoids are important, and flavonoids are important for the heart. So one of the best foods rich in carotenoids that are great for the eyes are actually egg yolks.
Raw egg yolks, you're saying uncooked yolks?
Well, they don't have to be uncooked, but they shouldn't be cooked in a high heat. So even the egg yolk, you'll start to break down some of the lipids and stuff if you overcook it. So poached eggs, soft-boiled eggs, or cooking slowly, more slow heat is a better way to cook the eggs. So they don't have to be raw, but egg yolks, because of the phospholipids and the lecithin or the lipotrophics in there that mix with all those orange, particularly eggs that are from free-range chickens that really go and eat anything they want. They're not being fed any food. They get these beautiful orange yolks. Those are one of the best foods for the eyes. And then flavonoids. So we use something called fruit anthocyanins that we put in everybody's smoothie. That is the blackberries, the black currants. Black currants are great for the eyes. Bilberries are great for the eyes. So I've developed a formula with bilberry extract with lycium berries. So another great snack for the eye is the goji berries. So you can go and buy goji berries and snack on 5 or 10 of those a day. They're actually called bright eyes in Chinese medicine. So bilberries or blueberries, goji berries, all the berries, all those purple and orange pigment foods. And then zinc is also very important for cataracts too. And then the visual acuity is a dropper, and then the L-carnosine. Ulcerative colitis, was that the other one? So
yes, that was the other one. Yes, if you have
so, I'll just say the formulas that I always give for that. I'll say 3 formulas that I always use, and then everything else is personalized. 1 is called Digest Mend. 2 is called Inflammaway. And 3 is, say, Complete Omega Essentials. So those are 3 that I'm always going to use with ulcerative colitis: Inflammaway, Digest Mend, and Complete Omega Essentials. So I could at least start there with that. And
of course, you want to look at diet and all that.
Oh yeah,
too.
I'm just trying to do some right. Yeah.
Right.
Like I said, like Barbara said, it's best to see a practitioner and get the whole workup and all of that. I'm just saying, like, the things that no matter what, when I see somebody, I always give them those 3 things.
Right. What were we saying, Barbara?
A great question to kind of end with is James said, how does spirituality benefit any health regime?
Yeah, that's good.
Well, I think there's 2 ways to answer that. One is that the spiritual energy, or what we call the vital spirit, is the everlasting self. So if we see ourselves beyond the finite world that we live in, and we come someday, like we all will, to our deathbed, our spiritual self is all that really matters. And so in the final analysis, who we are spiritually is all that matters. We only take good, in my opinion, we only take good care for ourselves and care for others to allow us to be here to do the greatest good and bring about as much love as possible. So that is our reason. So our whole reason for living is to keep understanding who we are as individuals, because we are still that, in our own way, to find our own unique way to make the world as healthy as possible. Then, if we want to take it backwards and now look, it turns out that our spiritual well-being is interconnected to every aspect of our health. So when we are spiritually well, everything else works better. So we're more relaxed, we're less prone to anger, less prone to worry, less prone to fear. The things that beat us up are anger, fear, and worry. The things that help us are courage, kindness, love, compassion. So those things come back and actually benefit our physical health as well. Because whenever we're in a heightened state, we make stress hormones. When we're making stress hormones, our bodies want to be really good at combating stress, so much so that it's less good at doing everything else. It compromises everything else. So as energy is facilitated out towards stress, everything else physically suffers. So when we are spiritually well, we are also, the totality of our health is better, but more importantly, our spiritual health, when it, in the final analysis, is all that really matters.
Wow. Thank you, Donnie, for your time and your years of dedication and research to helping people. And you're
You're
still
welcome.
going. You're still doing it. You're still developing formulas, putting it.
I work harder than ever.
He's just starting.
Just starting. I will say, back on the spiritual note, an interesting thing, since I want to talk about the academy. So we've been trying to figure out, like, the spiritual component. You know, we've had these 5 toolboxes, and how do we implement spiritual care, and what does that really mean? So what we did, we came up with the 6 toolbox, and there's 2 components of that. It's how a practitioner is trained to ultimately utilize their own spirit to help them as a guiding force, because you can't figure it out all up here. No matter how much pathology you look at, no matter how many clues you do, how you put it all together has to come from here. So I always say, you fill the brain with everything, but it has to go from here to the heart to figure it out. So how to train practitioners to do that is now under the umbrella of the spiritual toolbox. And the other aspect is how to train practitioners in spiritual care. Because particularly when you're working with chronic illness and cancer, people's spiritual needs always come to the forefront. And you have to be equipped and comfortable in meeting them there and supporting them there.
Mm. You know, when Chinese medicine, in Chinese medicine I studied, they said the highest form of medicine is to get people excited about life. You know, that's what they say. So I think that's what we're all here to do, is encourage each other to do our passion.
Yeah, that's why I love, we're here, we're passionate about what we do. And it's so beautiful to focus on what I call good news. It's always focusing on what we all can do in little and big ways to make our health better, our loved ones' health better, and anyone we connect to in any way that we can. So I thank everyone. I thank you so much, Alan. You are a great gift. Barbara is as much my gem as well as yours. And so, and Andrea, thanks for stepping in, coming back from your big trip from Italy. You've been wonderful as well. And thank you, everyone. And God bless you.
Thank you, Donnie.
Thank
you so
you.
much, Donnie. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, everyone, for showing up today. And we did put the links in the chat box to helpful
Could you just
websites, resources.
say them out loud in case people are watching and not looking at the chat? Or
Oh,
just
you
where to
bet.
find? Yeah.
You bet. And so one thing that's important to know is that if you were on Alan's live stream with YouTube and you didn't pre-register for our event, please email, if you'd like to get our resources, please email, address Andrea, info@mederifoundation.org. Mederi is spelled Mederi, and we'll be sure to include you in our group of people that will be emailed Donnie's PDF and some of the other resources he mentioned, as well as a link to the replay. If you're interested in learning more about Mederi Center, you can go to Mederi, again, that's MEDERI center.org. And there you'll find links on how to become a patient. If you're a practitioner and you're interested in Mederi Academy, you can click on the education link. And then, of course, Donnie's blog is Donnie, DONNIE, Yance, YANCE.com.
Great.
Did I miss anything? Donnie, Barbara, Alan?
I think it all went really well. Thank you. And thank you, Alan
Thank you,
Steinfeld.
Alan, for always promoting important information that
We're
makes
all
us
in this
healthier,
together.
better place.
That's right.
And Donnie, you're just thank you for
Thank
everything
you,
you do
Barbara.
for so many.
Let's do this again, okay, Donnie?
Yeah. Let's do it again. It sounds great.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for watching New Realities. Alan Steinfeld with Barbara Slane and Donnie Yance from the Mederi Foundation. Okay. Talk to you soon, everybody. Bye. Thanks.